the governor travels to Puerto Rico and does this grandstanding there, what I call pandering for votes. And he's talking about how it's all the President Trump's fault, the administration's fault. Puerto Rico, in my mind, is a natural disaster. Unfortunately, those happen. What's happening in New York is a man-made disaster. You have roads and you have infrastructure crumbling right now, and he goes off to Puerto Rico.
Well, go back even further. I mean, to put it in context, we still have subways that haven't been fixed from Hurricane Sandy, which happened in 2012. I mean, if he wants to go and bloviate over Hurricane Maria, that's one thing. But you're right. This is a governor who day after day becomes increasingly more unhinged. He is more afraid than any other political candidate I've ever seen of his Democratic primary opponent, the activist and actress Cynthia Nixon. So what you see now is arm flailing of the governor, trying desperately to catch the attention of both the national 2020 audience and the liberal base, which does make up a big chunk of New York State. Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of folks don't even realize, who don't live in the Empire State, that he's been governor 8 years, 2 terms, right? And governor's position in New York, there is no term limit. So this guy, if he doesn't run for president, this guy thinks he's governor for life, essentially. Yeah, I mean, his father did 3 terms as governor, and then before losing to George Pataki. But the interesting thing about some of these new announcements is that parolees in New York State get given the right to vote back after they're done with parole. He's actually going a step further and letting out people who are civilly confined because they are sex offenders who are a danger to other people and pardoning them just so they can have the right to vote in, coincidentally, what would be his reelection come September primary and November general election. I mean, again, this is a guy who has lost all a grasp on reality and sees only his own political demise if he doesn't do desperate things to attract liberals come November. And so while he's in Puerto Rico, his administration makes the announcement of the pardoning of these criminals, many of whom are sex offenders. Roll tape.
One of the things we can do is pardon people for past crimes so their records are expunged. Pardoning means you pardon the crime committed, so they no longer have a criminal record.
Thanks for explaining that to us. They no longer. Thanks for explaining the pardoning process. But unfortunately, as you pointed out, included within this batch of people being pardoned just in time for the election cycle, from my count, is 77 sex offenders. Is that really what the people of New York want? No. I mean, New York enacted a civil confinement law, which basically takes people that we know have a high recidivism rate, like sex offenders, and confines them in a not-so-jaily-like setting. This is something the voters did want and they did approve. He's just coming along now at the 11th hour, essentially overturning that for his own benefit. It's just so strange to see someone who, again, pardoning is not in itself a bad thing. When you're pardoning people who are criminals for your own benefit, that's really where New Yorkers should draw the line. I mean, it's absurd. Sex offenders for Cuomo, I suppose that's the new slogan, because this includes a guy named the Voodoo Rapist who, at somewhere around age 50, was preying upon young girls and went off to prison for a reason. Meantime, you have the state of New York now actively suing the Trump administration over the tax cuts, which most Americans, I think, agree are a good thing, a positive thing. It just so happens that in New York, you have a pretty heavy income tax, and so it kind of conflicts with the overall tax cuts, but the tax cuts are a good thing. But then you have the city of New York having these safe havens. So Cuomo calls this, the tax cuts, an assault on the sovereignty of New York. Yet in the city of New York, now all of a sudden, I guess your city council is involved in these safe havens where the city is actually essentially giving sanction to people who want to shoot up illegal drugs? Yeah, I mean, so the safe injection facilities is another one of these crazy harebrained liberal ideas. Mayor de Blasio wants to do this as part of a pilot program, but we don't need a pilot program because we can just look at the disaster that has become Toronto, that has become Sydney, that has become Vancouver, places that have these type of injection facilities. And frankly, if you look at Australia, Sydney has had one for about 10 years. Every single other major city in Australia has had a political fight about not putting one of these in their city because they can see what's going on just down the road. We don't need a pilot program. The most unfortunate
part about this is that the 4 neighborhoods Bill de Blasio chose could be examples of his success. They're neighborhoods that have just started to come back.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.